Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for your patience. My computer decided that it didn't want to play nice with the gear here. So thank you to Gustavo and to Dan for making sure that we get things started off. I have to say a couple more thank yous. Before I got started today, before I spoke at the conference, I reached out to Dan and I said, hey, I want to make sure that I connect with some owners, get an idea of what their stories are and what is going to be important to them. So I want to thank Michael Leonard. Mike, are you in here? Whew, appreciate you. Todd and Jackie Gulbis, are they in here? No? And then Megan Greathouse, thanks so much for taking time. They took a half hour out of their week running their business to help me out and just to answer some of my questions. So give them a round of applause. Much appreciated to them. How many of you were here for Mr. Wolf? I didn't catch his first name. Mr. Wolf. Peter, thank you. His is going to tie in so great with what I'm about to share with you. I know that I've got about 30 seconds to capture your attention because you've been sitting already this morning, you've been to conferences, and you're like, all right, monkey dance, let's see what you got, right? And I just want to tell you right off the bat that you are my favorite people, and I'll tell you why. How many of you left corporate America to start your sign business? Okay, like most everybody's here, right? I want to thank you and applaud you for being willing to take the leap to bet on yourself. It's a scary thing to leave something that feels like comfort, although, as we all know, a corporate job isn't always solid, right? I talked to, I want to say, Risley. Where you at, my friend? Risley the Grizzly told me that he's like, I can F up my own life just as well as a corporate job. So that's, you know, I'm going to bet on myself. So congratulations to you, honestly. It's a scary thing to go out on your own as an entrepreneur, as a business owner. The fear, the trepidation, the tears, the blood, the sweat, congratulations. And congratulations for still being here. I also understand that there's some folks that are dipping their toe in, considering owning a business. Where are those at? Do it, man. Bet on yourself. One of my favorite quotes ever. Yeah, give them a round of applause. Do it. Just so you know, there's one owner who started clapping. They say do it. Everyone else is like, I don't know. Maybe. One of my favorite quotes is from a guy named Tim Ferriss. Anybody know that name? Tim Ferriss. Most people will choose unhappiness over uncertainty. Most people will choose unhappiness over uncertainty. My father did it for 30 years. He just retired in September. I don't want to be that. I don't want that for you. Life's too short, too limited to not bet on yourself. And this isn't a motivational talk necessarily, but I just want to, congratulations for betting on yourself. Keep doing it over and over and over again. Keep it up. So today I want to share just a little bit about EOS. If you don't have one of these, there's the Get a Grip booklet on the back. You can take notes in your guidebook, or you can take notes in here, right all over this. I've got extras. And then there's also some traction books back there. That's my gift to you. And if anybody grabbed a traction book before I got all my stickers in, and you'd like to put a sticker in there so that you remember Aaron Perkypile, that really is my last name. I couldn't come up with that on my own. I'm not that creative. But I'll just give you a sticker here so that when you get through that book or you start reading that book and you're like, what the hell is this? I have a question about that. You can email me, call me. At EOS Worldwide, one of our core values is help first. My passion in life is helping business owners like you live your ideal life, live your best life. So today we're going to cover three things. Just a real quick agenda. Number one, we're going to get real about your business. A lot of times we float along and we have rosy colored glasses. Hey, everything's great. Everything's going well. I've got money in the bank. But I want to elevate, levitate above the business and actually dig in, be real about your business. So as we work through some of the tools and talk about some of these tools, I want you to really think about honestly and vulnerably about your business and where you're really at. So we're going to get real. Number two, we're going to keep it simple. Gino Wickman, who developed EOS and developed this model and developed the tools and kind of cobbled these tools together, never intended this to be something that felt like rocket science. It's not something that's meant to be something that we have to like have a master's or a doctorate in order to understand them. They're simple tools. We like to tell people that anything you're going to hear, if you're looking for the latest management fad or some sort of magic bullet or secret medicine or secret sauce, you're not going to find it. These are time-tested, road-tested tools. They're proven. They've worked. They work and they work and they work. We've got 650 EOS implementers like myself in our community, and we have presented and shared and implemented these tools in business in over 17,000 businesses in over 120,000 sessions. This stuff works. I'm not practicing here on you. I'm not making this stuff up. So we're going to keep it simple. It's understandable. And my goal, my promise to you is that you will all walk away with at least one nugget or one tool or one discipline that you can implement tomorrow in your business. That's my goal. Fair? And the third thing is this. EOS helps you drive results. Whatever you want from your business. I love what Peter talked about. You started it for a financial reason or a work-life balance or whatever it is that you want from your business, you have to be careful what you wish for, because if you use the tools that EOS encourages you to implement in your business, you will get what you want from your business. So be careful what you wish for, all right? So let's get real, just a minute. I want to ask just a couple questions here. First of all, how many of you, this is your first conference ever? Awesome. Give them a round of applause. Thanks for being here. How many of you have been in business for 2 years or less? Awesome. How many of you have been in business 2 to 5 years? 5 to 10 years? All right, 10 years plus. All right, everybody keep your hands up, 10 years plus. Those are the people you should be asking all your questions to, right? If you haven't already. That's the wise folks in the room. Let's talk revenue. Employees. How many of you are 0 to 10 employees, 0 to 10 people in your business? All right, real small shops. That's great. Anybody 10 to 20? 20 to 50? Anybody 50 plus? Okay, awesome. Just get a feel for the room. And last question, how many of you have heard or are implementing EOS in your business? Fantastic. You're my new best friends. How many of you have heard of it and you feel like you're a little bit conversant in it, but you'd like to learn a little bit more? Awesome. And how many of you just heard me say EOS 3 times and you're like, I think I'm in the wrong room? Yeah, awesome. Okay. Don't worry, we're going to get into it. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. So right out of college, I was an accounting major, and so I went and worked for Deloitte in Omaha. Is Jim Stapleton in the room? Yeah, let's go. And I saw my man with the Creighton jacket earlier. I saw him earlier anyway. Appreciate you. But I was like, that's where I worked. I worked at First National Tower in Omaha. And I'll tell you, let me tell you a little bit about my personality. After my first busy season, I was going to gouge my eyes out because it was so miserable. And I had started with maybe 20, 25 other kids who had graduated, so pretty young. And I realized that half my start class was leaving the business, was leaving accounting after one busy season, which is not it's not crazy because the big four firms, they plan on attrition. But I was bound and determined to make sure that didn't continue to happen. And so I marched myself in, got myself an appointment with the managing partner. His name was Lance. And I went into Lance's office, super nice guy, super friendly, and I said, Lance, listen, I feel upset because we're losing half my start class, and I think if we just clarified our vision and our mission and maybe our core values, we could hold on to some of these people. And he thought, thank you so much. I left his office, nothing was ever done about it, and he retired 2 months later. So, but what I realized pretty quick was I didn't want to live the rest of my life in corporate America. I'm too entrepreneurial. Or as a friend of mine back in the back was telling me, to intrapreneurial. I wanted to grow things, and I wasn't in a position or in the place at Deloitte where I was able to do that. And so I discovered, or I had what I would consider my entrepreneurial seizure, which many of you have experienced, where you just can't help yourself, and you're like, you know what, let's go out and do our own thing. So I've done a lot of different things. I've been an accountant, an auditor. Yeah, anyone else want to throw up in their mouth? Yeah. I'm a recovering CPA. Okay? So I'm a recovering CPA, former church pastor. I swear a little bit more than most church pastors that you know. I've worked in finance. I've coached college basketball team. I taught college business classes. And then my favorite thing that I've done so far is I joined a leadership team of a small business in Lincoln. And that's when I found EOS. And we were struggling. We were hitting a wall, we were hitting a ceiling, and I went to the owners and I said, listen, I found this program, I found this system that could transform our business, could help you enjoy your lives better, could give you more time, make you more profitable. There was an owner in the business, there were 3 owners, and one of those owners was working 70, 80 hours a week in the business. The other 2 had full-time jobs outside of the business, and they were always at odds with each other and just like fraying. And my favorite thing about implementing EOS in that business was this. 1, we increased revenue 2 years in a row by 30% year over year. Number 2, we kicked out and got rid of our asshole clients that we did, sorry. I'm on camera, I'm trying to watch myself. But we got rid of the clients that we hated, that were sucking the energy out of us. How many of you have clients that are sucking the life out of you? Yeah, David told me last night about one of his. Yeah, I know. But you got rid of them, and we became a much more cohesive. I'll tell you right now, that owner, 5 years ago we implemented EOS. That owner now bought out his 2 partners. He's working 15 to 20 hours a week in the business from home with his 2 little kids, loving his life. So that's why I'm so passionate about EOS and what it can do for your business. It's going to give you exactly what you want. So, some of you are right now riding a rocking horse in your business, right? There's a lot of activity. There's no momentum, and I have a picture of a rocking horse that doesn't want to show up. Oh, maybe not. Maybe I just deleted the picture. I don't know. But you're riding a rocking horse, right? My wife tells me she was the youngest of 5 girls, and she tells me the story of the one time that she remembers ever getting spanked was she was riding her rocking horse, one of those with the springs on it that's super loud while her mom was on the phone. And her mom told her like 3 times, get off the rocking horse. She's making a lot of racket, making a lot of movement, but not going anywhere, right? And some of you have graduated to the stick horse, where you're making some forward progress, but limited range, right? Lots of energy expended, and it all depends on you. It all rides on you driving the business. And what I want to help you do is get to where you are riding a racehorse, where you have more energy, it's directed, it's powerful, you're getting faster to the finish line. That's what we're shooting for. And I told some colleagues of mine that really what I wanted to say is I want to put you on a rocket ship, which is like 19 million horsepower. So rather than riding one racehorse, you're shooting for the moon, whatever that moon looks like for you. So what we're trying to do today is get you off that rocking horse where there's all that energy, try to move you from that stick horse where it's all dependent on you, and then over time we move you to that racehorse, okay? So we've found, and Gino, when he was cobbling these things together, realized that most business owners are experiencing 5 frustrations. 5 frustrations. The first one is they feel like they're out of control. The business is running them rather than them running the business, right? So we want to put you in more control of your business. That's why the talk is called Get a Grip on Your Business. We want you to grab hold of that business. Second, profit. There's not enough. It's not happening fast enough. We want to make you more efficient. We want to make sure that after-tax profit is there, that we're claiming the EBITDA that we really want. Number 3, people. You're dealing with people issues. How many of you have people in your business? I know you already do because you all raise your hand, right? Those of you who didn't raise your hand in your business, did they all leave while you were gone, or did they just take the day off? Like, how does that work? Okay. This afternoon, I have a talk called People Are the Worst. People are the worst. When I was teaching college, my wife would ask me, oh, how was the day? I was like, I would love teaching if it wasn't for the dadgum students. They're the worst. They're whiny. And none of them are going to care as much about your business as you do when you own your business. So we want to help you solve that people issue. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. Number 4, you're hitting the ceiling. You're running along. Most businesses are just charging along, and then all of a sudden we kind of get stuck and we're spinning our wheels a little bit. We're just kind of bumping our heads against things. Sometimes it's the whole business that's hitting the ceiling. Sometimes it's just one department or one function in your business that's hitting the ceiling, and sometimes it's you that's hitting the business. What we want to do is get to a place where we can break through those ceilings. And number 5, nothing is working. And you've tried a lot of stuff. Your people are like, oh my gosh, here comes the owner again with another big idea, flavor of the month. They're like Culver's. For my Midwest folks, Culver's is the ice cream place. They got a flavor of the week. And you're like, what are they going to bring this time? So what we're looking for, you're tired of trying all these other things. Let's pick one and stick to it, right? So trying to break through that frustration that nothing's working. So in order to keep this simple, I want to just share with you what we call the EOS model. It's made up of 6 components, and if you open up your little handout there, you can follow along here. Write all over this, like I said, there's plenty of them back there. But we're going to start with page number 1 there, that EOS model. And I'm going to go one pass around the model, just kind of high level, and we're going to do a little bit deep dive. And I want to make this a workshop type of a deal, so write all over that, ask questions. If at any point I say something, you're like, I didn't quite catch that, or I'm not sure what you said, wave your hand, let me know what's going on so I can answer those questions. Any questions? All right. I'm serious. Wave those hands. All right. So EOS is based on this idea that your business is at the center of this model. So where it says your business, you could scratch that out and put your sign company's name in there, your sign shop's name in there, and start thinking about your business this way. All right? And the very first component that's important is the vision. I have to be honest. Peter and the guy who came up with him stole some of my lines, which is great because we have alignment, right? You have to know where you're headed. Proverbs says that without vision, the people perish, right? So that's what we're looking for. We want to know where we're headed, have this grand vision. In order to achieve a phenomenal vision, you have to have great people. How many of you have great people in your business? How many of you have really crappy people in your business? How many of you have a mixture of both? Okay, we're all entrepreneurs here, we get it. But we'll talk a little bit more about how we define what a great person is so that we can achieve a phenomenal vision. Number 3, we have to track really great data, right? Some people call them KPIs, those sorts of things. But we're going to talk about, once we are clear on where we're headed with our vision, we started to identify our people, kind of gaps that we have, and we're tracking the right data, not too much and not too little. All of the imperfections, all the impurities, all the good, the bad, and the ugly start to bubble up. What we need to do is create a culture where we are identifying the issues in your business honestly, openly, and making sure that we're setting them up, knocking them down, making them go away for the long-term greater good of the business. Number 5, we've got the process component. I like to call this the least sexy component in the whole model because most of us would rather, pull our fingernails out rather than talk about process, right? Can seem super boring, but this is the key, and I have a presentation tomorrow afternoon called Systemize to Humanize so that you can take more control of your business and have the most important things in your business done the best and right way every single time. And then finally, we've got the traction component. So that's taking the vision, bringing it down to the ground so we can actually execute on it day in and day out. They stole my quote. Gino changed it a little bit, but vision without traction is hallucination. We can float up here all the time, right? And we can dream and dream and dream, and that's what most folks do. Rather than starting their own business, they dream and dream and dream, and it's ready, aim, 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 aim. Well, you actually have to execute. You have to actually pull the trigger eventually, right? So that's what we're trying to do. So let's go back, do a deeper dive into each of these components. We're going to turn to page number 2, and we've got 8 questions. We found that the majority of businesses are operating, our goal is to strengthen the 6 key components and get you to 80% or stronger in each of those 6 key components. And what Gino found when he started working with businesses, and what we found as we continue to work with businesses, all 650 EOS implementers, that most businesses are operating around 20% in each of those 6 key components and succeeding in spite of themselves. We've got a product, we're just hustling our butts off, we're digging deep, pulling ourselves up by our bootstraps, we're succeeding kind of, but we could do so much more. So we jump into that vision component, and there's 2 tools or disciplines in each of these 6 key components that we teach to help you strengthen the 6 key components. Okay, so vision component number 1 is what we call the 8 questions. So there on page number 2 and page number 3, it's a 2-page strategic planning document. You know, you talk about these long-term strategic plans. If you worked in corporate America, someone handed you that 50-page, 100-page binder or spiral thing, and they're like, here's where we're headed. And it sits on your desk for a week, and then 2 months later, you're like, I got to clean my desk. It's all a mess, and it gets stuck in a drawer. And then, 3 months later, you're like digging through your drawer, and like, this stuff is, and you throw it. in a file cabinet somewhere. And at the end of the year, or maybe 2 or 3 years later, you dig it out and you're like, oh, did we hit what we said we were going to hit? How many of you actually hit that strategic plan or strategic goal? I don't see a lot of hands, right? Because it just kind of gets buried. And so what we do is we take a simplified approach, an entrepreneurial approach to strategic planning by answering the 8 questions. And the 8 questions, I keep hitting my mic there, the 8 questions are in these orange boxes. So we're going to just dive into them a little bit. You all have heard of core values, right? Right, there's our VTO. How many of you have core values in your business already? Fantastic, fantastic. How many of you know what core values are, but you don't have them in your business? Anybody not ever heard the word core values before? Okay, we're on the same page. What we do when we want to start shaping the culture, that's what Peter talked about a little bit, this employee culture, this business culture, we go on a discovery process to find out what those core values are. And we're looking for 3 to 7 core values. We don't want 30 or 70 or 12. We're looking for 3 to 7. Less is more. And we're going to discover those, we're going to define those, and then we're going to use those to define and develop our culture. We're going to live and breathe those consistently over and over and over again. All right? Question number 2. So that's who we are. Question number 2 is our core focus. What do you love to do? What are you best at? What do you want to be best in the world at? And it's made up of 2 pieces, the purpose, cause, or passion. This is why you get up every single day. Why do we show up? Why did we start this business in the first place? And then the second piece is our niche. What do we want to do, or what I like to call our niche, because niche and niche don't work for me, but niche somehow does. So our niche, what's our niche? What do we want to be laser focused on? It allows us to avoid shiny objects. I talked to an owner last night. His name's Mike, and I saw his face in the guidebook. Mike, are you in here? And he talked, not that Mike. And he said, yeah, my team, I love to do these really difficult projects and these really difficult jobs. And the rest of the team's like, but can we just focus on the things we're really great at? And what the core focus allows you to do is stop having these arguments, but it's broad enough that you can make a lot of money in it, and it's narrow enough that we're not chasing all these crazy things. I'll give you an example. There was an electrical engineering firm in Michigan, a father-son, they owned it, and they loved it, and the son and the father both loved hockey. The son had grown up playing club hockey and all these things, and the local hockey rink came up for sale. And they said, you know what, boom, light bulb, let's buy this hockey rink. That would be a lot of fun to own. So sure enough, this electrical engineering firm bought a hockey rink. 2 years later, they'd lost several $1 million and finally sold it. And that's an example of getting out of your core focus. You're wandering all around chasing those shiny things, and that's what core focus does. It puts guardrails around you, not handcuffs, to keep you safe, to make sure that you're not chasing those shiny objects. All right, so we know who we are with our core values. We know what we love to do and are best at, what we want to be the best at the world at with our core focus. And then we've got our 10-year target. Jim Collins calls this the big, hairy, audacious goal. Anyone heard that before? So what I want you to do, we're going to just take 2 quiet minutes. Some of you, if you are running EOS already, you already have this. Those of you who've never heard of EOS before, don't worry. This is our first exercise. What I want you to do is take 2 minutes, and I want you to write down what you would like to have accomplished or what you would like to achieve in the next 10 years. Now, we tell you 10-year target. Most of our clients choose somewhere between 7 and 10 years. That's why we call it 10-year target. It could be 5 years, all the way out to 30 years, 40 years, whatever you're looking for. What I want you to do is take a minute, write down, try to be as specific as possible. Thanks to Peter for talking about SMART goals. Try to be as specific as possible. So I'm going to just give you a couple minutes. Write down, what do you want from your business in the next 10 years? Try to be as specific as possible. Yes, sir?
What if you plan on just being fishing, hunting in 10 years, and like maybe you got a 2 or 3 year target?
Put that down. That's fine. His question was, what if I just want to be fishing and hunting in the next 2 to 3 years, so I only have a 2 or 3 year target? Put that down. Whatever your longest term range target is in your mind, go ahead and put it down. See some pens still moving. About 30 more seconds. Do I have a volunteer that would be willing to share what their 10-year or long-term target is? Yes, sir. What's your name?
My name's Dan Lucarelli from Indy Sign Factory in Indianapolis.
All right, we got Indianapolis in the house. What's your 10-year target?
Sell my business for 10 times my initial investment.
Love it. 10x. Sell his business for, what's the date on that? When do you want it done by?
Well, we said 10 years.
So you're saying 10 years from today, sell your business for 10 times your initial investment.
Yeah, and if it's 9 or 10.
Whoa. Safe. I just want to make sure you're all awake. You didn't know physical comedy was a part of the show, did you? Thank you so much for sharing. Who else wants to share? Go ahead, sir. Neil.
Neil from Kelowna, BC, Canada.
Okay.
10 years, I want to be Don Conklin.
You want to be Don Conklin. That's a good inside joke that I'm not going to get. That's okay. Who else? I got a couple more. Yes, sir. I love it. Do you know what's going to take to get there? 5 years, business running on his own. Someone hand that direction. Who else? Yes, sir. Okay.
I put here, have it sold or passed on to the family.
Exit or pass on to the family in 3 years. Love it. Okay, I got one more book. Someone help me. I'm going to be all sweaty at the end of this. Anybody else? I got one more. Yes, sir. No ladies want to share it? Okay. Pass that down for me.
Well, we want to build a successful business because we're not trying to roll corners yet.
Love it.
Big enough to sell in 10 years to be able to retire, and we're hoping that the goal would be about 5 years.
Oh, awesome. So Chris and Lynn want to buy a business, or start their business, and sell within 10 years for $5 million or more? Great. Love it. Thanks for sharing that. One more. There was someone behind me. Yeah, go ahead.
My name is Sandy Paradise. I'm in Central Florida. And in 10 years, we want to have at least 5 million annual sales in owner-owned buildings.
Fantastic. $5 million in annual sales and
Owner-owned buildings.
owner-owned building. Love it. You want to be as specific as you can with your long-term target and now stay laser focused on that. That's what Peter was talking about. That business plan allows you to stay in your lane. Instead of deciding, hey, you know what, I'm going to start a sign business today, and then in 3 months, you know what I'm going to start? I'm going to start a Chick-fil-A franchise. And then, 3 months later, I'm like, hey, you know what, maybe I should start a private charter plane business. I don't have a pilot license, but we want to stay laser focused on that long-term goal. Now I'm out of breath. You can see how out of shape I am. Whew, running up and down. All right, so we know who we are with our core values. You know what we want to be best at the world at with our core focus. We know where we're headed with our 10-year target. Now we're going to dive into, I talked about all these. Now we want to dive into our marketing strategy. How are we going to achieve making that money, getting to that $5 million in revenue, selling that business? We want to be laser focused. So Jim was great about talking about this. What is your target? Know your target. And the very first question, or the very first piece of our marketing strategy, the 4 pieces, the very first piece, what is our target market? What is the demographic, geographic, and psychographic makeup of the people that we want to work with? What type of businesses are they? I loved the multi-family housing unit. That was a great niche or like great target market. They were very specific. What type of business we're looking for? Where are they located? Do I want to just be in my geographic area, my city? Do I want to be national? Do I want to be international? But what we talk about all the time, when I tell my clients all the time, almost more importantly, what is the psychographic makeup? What's important? What do they think about? What are your target market, your target clients? What do they think about? What do they care about? What do they love? I can't target a market without knowing how they think, right? That's why we work with entrepreneurial companies, because EOS implementers, we've all been entrepreneurs. We know how you think. We know the pains, the struggles. So that's what we're looking for, that psychographic makeup. I don't like to work with assholes. That's one of my personal psychographic makeups. So if you're an asshole, you can tell me later, but then we can agree to part ways. Once we've identified our demographic, geographic, and psychographic makeup of our target market, the people that we want to target, we have what we call the 3 uniques. And Dan referenced this. He was like, hey, tell everybody next to you, what are 3 things that set you apart from your competitors in your market, right? Did you write those down? No? This is the messaging that's going to resonate with that target market. This is what sets you apart. This is why someone wants to do business with you rather than walking across the street to FedEx, Kinko's. I don't know if Kinko's is still a thing, but why would they want to do business with you as opposed to any of your competitors? This is what sets you apart. And we use this to craft that message to our target market, right? Number 4 there is the proven process. The proven process is just a 1-page, generally mostly visual, graphical, just very little words that shows somebody, when I start considering doing business with you, how do I know that you're going to take care of me? It's a way to overcome objections. It's a way to help them understand that we have a proven way to take care of your needs specifically. So we use that 1-page proven process to show everybody, hey, if you come and work with Aaron as your EOS implementer, we've got a proven process. I can show you this is the process that we take that we know works. This is how we're going to make sure that we take care of your project. We know that it works. And then finally, we have that guarantee. Does anybody have a guarantee in their business? A guarantee is just another way, or maybe it's a pledge or a promise. We're going to make it right. Some of you, have you ever, anybody ordered a mattress off online? I ordered one of those purple mattresses, and it gave you that, hey, try our mattress for 90 days, and if you don't like it, we'll give you 150% or 200% of your money back. Well, I'm a sucker, so I'm going to buy my mattress online, and guess what? It's going to go on my mattress frame, and then I'm not going to do anything with it. Even if I hated it, I'm going to sleep on it for a long time because I'm a sucker. But this is just a way to overcome additional objections for your business and doing business with you. So considering a guarantee. And once we're really clear on who we are with our core values, what we love to do, what we want to be best at the world at with our core focus, where we're headed with our 10-year target, how we're going to get there by targeting the right people with the right messaging and offering and showing them how they can do business with us and they're going to be taken care of, we just start distilling this down into smaller chunks so that it's manageable. It's kind of like the Russian dolls, those nesting dolls. My grandma had some of these, and I thought they were fantastic because you had that big one, you open it up, oh, there's another one. You open it up, oh, there's another one. And they're like small iterations, like they're wearing a similar style clothes. They're just smaller, smaller, smaller as you go. And that's basically what we're doing with the VTO. We've got the 10-year target, and now we're opening up that 10-year target and saying, where do we need to be 3 short years from now in order to be on track or on pace for that longer-term target? So that 3-year picture, we're going to set a future date. So some of you who set that goal for selling our business in 10 years, what kind of revenue do we need to hit in 3 years? What's our profit need to look like? What's a measurable 1 or 2 things that we could track to understand the scale of our business? And then you notice those dots down there. You've got 5 to 15 brush strokes. There's a reason we call it the 3-year picture. We're painting a picture of what the business needs to look like. What's our location look like? How many employees do we need? What kind of tools do we have in the business? What kind of equipment? Have we moved into another market? And we're just painting that picture so it's super crystal clear in everybody's mind where we need to be 3 short years from now to be on pace to hit that 10-year target. I can dream and dream and dream and say, oh, you know what, in 30 years, I'm going to climb Mount Everest. But if I don't start to narrow down, okay, what do I need to do tomorrow? I should probably go for a walk, right? To be on track. Well, how far do I need to be able to walk in next quarter or in 2 years or 3 years so that I can make sure that I make it up Mount Everest? And then I need at some point to start walking up mountains, right? Maybe hiking, which I hate. Side note, you're welcome. But we're just taking chunks and we're starting to distill this and crystallize this. And what's great about this 3-year picture is when we all know and operate from the same picture on the same page, it sets us up for really great strategic planning in the shorter term. So the top page of this is called the vision page. It's that longer term. We're out here. It's developing and defining our culture, developing and defining what we want to be the best at the world at. And we're going to pull this down and move it to the traction side of the page. So that's page number 3. It's that bottom half here. And we're set up now for really great shorter term strategic planning. So what do we need to do by the end of this calendar year, in the next 12 months, what do we need to hit to be on pace for that 3-year picture? We're just stair-stepping this, right? We've opened up another doll and pulled them out. We've got the one-year plan. Again, setting revenue, profit, measurables. And then you know what we're going to do? We're going to set 3 to 7 goals for the year. Not 37. We got 3 to 7 priorities for the year, and we call those goals. Did you know that priorities was only a singular word? So priority was the only way it came until the 1940s. And then we went to World War II, and it turns out we needed to have more than one priority at a time. So they decided to make it a plural, priorities. And then what happened is, over time, we've just said, everything's a priority. And if everything's a priority, then nothing's a priority, right? So we're looking for 3 to 7 targeted, smart goals that let us get on the path and on track to be able to hit that 3-year picture and paint that fully out. And then we've got our 90-day goals, which we call ROCKS. And ROCKS comes from, the concept initially came from Stephen Covey and his glass pillar, or this glass cylinder exercise. And then Vern Harnish coined the word ROCKS. And it's this idea that every one of us has 1,000 things going on in our minds and in our lives at one time. And we've got water, and we've got sand, and we've got pebbles, and we've got these big rocks. And if we pour the water in first, all the distractions, all the stuff that just kind of seeps into everything that we do, we're never going to be able to get to those most important things, which are those rocks. The most important items, it's that important but not urgent, those things that we need to be focused on. So what we do is we set up 3 to 7 rocks, 3 to 7 priorities in a 90-day window. Science tells us that we can really only focus for about 90 days before we start to pull apart at the seams. How many of you set a New Year's resolution this year? Wow, cynical. Thank you for the 2 brave ones up here who actually said, how are you doing on those? Are you still on track? Woo, I got one guy who's still on track. Are you still on track with yours? Man, you're killing my vibe up here. Usually when I set New Year's resolutions, by week 2, I've forgotten what it even was. Right? It's hard to set a good New Year's resolution when you're at that New Year's Eve party and you had a couple cocktails, and then the next morning you're like, F it, I don't need to do it. Right? What we're trying to do is avoid that and just stay super laser focused. And I'll tell you right now, the best way to do this, take those goals that you've had and break them up and say, we like to say that we don't want any rocks that are orphans. Right? And what that means is we don't want to set priorities for a quarter that aren't helping us advance to those goals on the one-year plan. So we want to look at those 3 to 7 goals on the one-year plan, help set smart, specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, time-bound, so that we can actually achieve the most important things in the business and move the ball forward. Our goal is to get to 80% or better on rocks, completing our rocks every single quarter. Okay? That's a great example of how we're driving discipline and accountability in the business. And then finally, we've got this thing called the issues list. How many of you have issues in your business? Okay, those of you who didn't raise your hand are liars. I'm a pastor. I don't take confession, but I could tell you where to go. Okay? So everybody has issues, and the issues that are housed on the VTO are those longer-term issues. We might have things that pop up and you say, you know what, we don't need to prioritize or try to solve that this quarter or maybe the next quarter, but we don't want to lose it. We don't want to forget about it. Or maybe it's an opportunity. We don't want to lose that, and we're not ready to execute on that opportunity this quarter, but we want to get to a place where we can, so we're going to keep it on the issues list, what we call the long-term issues list on the Vision Traction Organizer, or VTO, so that we don't forget about it. And then next quarter when we meet, we can dive in and say, hey, do we need to solve this? Do we need to address this? Do we need to attack this opportunity? Not yet? Okay, we'll leave it on the VTO. We'll come back to it. So it's just a way to organize our brains, because otherwise it's just living up here and we're going crazy, right? So that's the Vision Traction Organizer. And once we've gotten that all filled out, guess what you have to do? You have to tell somebody about it. You have to tell your people. So we have this thing called Shared by All. You've got to get everybody in a room once a quarter at minimum and actually tell them, who are we with our core values? What do we want to be best at the world at with our core focus? Where are we headed with our 10-year target? How are we going to get there with our marketing strategy? And then how are we going to start breaking that down with that 3-year picture, 1-year plan, etc.? That's what we need to do. And I'll tell you another great thing about this is it shows that you as a leader are willing to be held accountable to the same plan that you're holding them accountable for. right? People refuse to get on board if you aren't willing to be held accountable to the same standard that you're hoping that they're going to be held accountable for. All right, so that gets us to 100% strong. We've answered those 8 questions, and every single employee, every single owner, everybody who is working in the business shares the same vision and is rowing in the same direction. That's the vision component. All right, let's move on to the people component. We all have people, and they're all a headache. Let's talk a little bit about how we manage people in our business. Just another plug, 4 o'clock this afternoon. People are the worst. They really are. We'll talk about some specific tools that we can use to attract, retain, and really do a great job of leading and managing our people. So we have 2 concepts when it comes to identifying great people in an EOS-run organization. The first one is right people. You know those core values that we talked about? Guess what? We're actually going to use those. So those of you, if you turn to page number 4, those of you with core values in your business, I want you to write those core values across the top here, right? Write those core values across the top. Hopefully there's 3 to 7 of them. Down in the first line, and if you don't have core values, that's fine. But also, I'm just going to tell you how to fill this thing out. There's some examples of real-world core values on page 4. We're going to put people's names down the left-hand side. Everyone's like, yeah, dummy, we can read the screen. Okay, so we put our core values across the top, and then we put our name, the owner's name first. In that second line, what I want you to do is put the name of your best person, your best employee, and then in the third line, I want you to put the name of your worst employee. And then all we do is analyze our people, right? So these 5 core values are EOS Worldwide's core values. As an implementer, every quarter, I'm going to analyze myself and make sure, self-analyze and make sure that I fit these core values. And so we put the names down the left-hand side, and then we're just going to grade. And we're going to say, when people most of the time exhibit those core values, they get a plus. Hey, Maria, humbly confident. Most of the time, 80% more of the time. She's not perfect. We're not saying anyone's perfect, but most of the time, they're living the core values. Most of the time, they don't follow the core values. So 50% of the time or less. John Smith, humbly confident. That guy's a jerk. We don't want him, so he gets a minus. George Wilson, sometimes he exhibits it, and sometimes he doesn't. We just want to make sure that we're capturing from our gut how we feel like they're living up to those core values. We're going to do that for all the core values for every single employee. And I'll tell you, what we encourage and stress so importantly is you have to have what we call the bar. You have to establish a minimum of what people need to meet in order to be considered a right person in your organization. This is how we drive culture. And here's a little tip for you. Use these core values that you draft, that you discover, and come up with interview questions that somehow give you a glimpse into whether or not someone truly exhibits these core values. I had someone tell me recently that they love to hire just for core values, whether they have a seat or not in the business. We just want good people. And then to me, I was like, well, that's kind of like getting married on the first or second date. I know we're in Vegas, and then hoping it works out, right? Let's not do that. Let's do a little more due diligence, make sure they're a good fit. But honestly, this is how we define and determine and drive our culture. We're hiring with these core values. We're firing over these core values. We're reviewing, rewarding, retaining, all recognizing our employees based on how well they're exhibiting and living these core values. And I'll tell you right now, if someone interviews in your business and you share your core values and they're not a hell yes, that's who I am, you don't want them. In fact, you should be using these core values to scare away potential employees that aren't going to be a good fit for your culture. They're going to suck the life out of you and the rest of your team. So that's core values. We're using that people analyzer. And then the second piece that makes up a great person in an entrepreneurial organization is right seats. Peter mentioned this, right butts in the right seats, right? So we take the approach that we want to build the structure of the business first and then introduce people second. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. We use a tool called the accountability chart. This is page number 6, the accountability chart. And we operate under this understanding that every business really only has 3 major functions, especially entrepreneurial ones. You got a sales and marketing function, right? How we go out and drive demand for the business, how we close that business, right? Then we hand it off to operations, so we have an operations function, how we're delivering our products, our services. We have a finance function, how we're tracking money flowing in and out of the business, acquiring assets, keeping track of all those, taxes, all those things. And then we have an additional seat on this accountability chart called the integrator. And the integrator loves detail. They run the day-to-day. They dive in deep. They manage people. They're removing obstacles from folks, right? And then sometimes you've got a visionary. And the visionary and integrator couldn't be more different. They couldn't be more different. The visionary are what I call pigeons, right? They swoop in, and they crap all over everything, and then they swoop out, and the rest of the team's like, what the hell was that? What are we supposed to do now? How many of you are pigeons? Okay, let's be a little more self-aware. I saw 4 hands, and I've talked to more of you than that to know that there's more visionaries in here than that. Right? We don't want to admit it. But the visionary and integrator, yes, sir.
So, you're talking to a room full of small business owners that don't have that many people, and most of us get to be both of those.
Yeah. Fantastic question. He said we're in a room of entrepreneurs, and we aren't that big, and there's 2 seats there. What if we're sitting in both of those seats? Let me tell you a secret about the accountability chart. When you start building yours, you can have one person in multiple seats, but you cannot have multiple people in one seat. So you have one person in multiple seats. I can sit in the visionary seat, in the integrator seat, in the marketing and sales seat, but I can't have me and Megan both sitting in the integrator seat. Because if there's more people accountable, more than one person accountable, nobody's accountable. That idea that anybody can do it, but we're all waiting for somebody to do it, and I don't remember the whole thing, but you get the idea, right? Like I can be in many seats. In fact, if you read E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber, he talks about building basically this structure and putting your name in every single seat. I'm a single operator, I'm a solopreneur, my name's in every seat. But what this does is allows me to understand, what do I hate doing, and what's the next position that I need to hire, and that sort of thing, right? So great question. I'm glad you brought that up. I can be in multiple seats, but multiple people can't be in one seat. Lacks accountability. So you'll notice we've got the structure there, and we don't have any names there. We just have names. Oh, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I had a question like relates to his question in here. Let's say you're a small business, maybe 5, 10 employees.
Yep.
And you have 2 graphic designers.
Sure.
And so they're both responsible for operations, part of the sales, marketing process, graphic design. Are you saying that one of those people has to be accountable for the success of the design, or do you just measure both of them?
Fantastic question. So I've got 2 graphic designers. They're both doing the same job. Does one of them have to be in the seat, and the other one, I don't know what I do with them, that sort of thing? Is that kind of the question, right?
Well, you want them both to be responsible for graphic design, but
Right.
one does better things, and one does a little less better things.
Sure. So a couple ways you can handle that. One, I can have one seat and both of their names are in there, but honestly, they're both responsible for the same 5 roles in that seat. So that's one way I can do it. I can have a senior graphic designer and a junior graphic designer, so one answers, or maybe they're next to each other. So there's some nuance to that. Ultimately, what we're shooting for is everybody's crystal clear on what their roles are, what they are accountable for. That's why it's different than an org chart, because we've all seen org charts and you're like, that doesn't mean anything to me, it sits in a drawer too. What we want to know is, where are the lanes for each person? How do we make sure that you know what you're accountable for, and he knows and she knows, right? Like, we want to make sure that everybody's clear on what they're accountable for. Great question. Yes, sir?
So like, kind of same similar question, but you got 3 salespeople. You can have 3 people who are in a sales seat.
Correct.
You have 3 sales seats, and you have to break it up by a territory or a type of customer or some way.
Correct. Yeah, we can. So another great question. So his point, we have 3 salespeople, but somehow we need to break up the accountability. Maybe it's by territory or that sort of thing. Yeah, go ahead. Exactly. That's exactly what we're looking for. He said they should just know what they own. That's what the accountability chart is for. What do they own? And I'll tell you a couple of reasons why we want to know this. 1, I want my people to know what the expectation is for their job. 2, It drives accountability cross-functionally because I know what you're responsible for, and I can see where you're dropping the ball. Even I don't have to know everything about your role, but I know what you're accountable for. And you know what I'm accountable for. When I'm dropping the ball, it gives you permission to tell me, hey, Perky Pile, pick yourself up. Let's get our shit together, right? All right. So next up, we start with structure first. So we decide what's our structure need to look like. And then we're going to start putting roles in seats. So, for example, we're going to put our function in, and then we're going to say, here are the 3 to 5 roles that they are accountable for. You can see some examples there on page number 6 of some seats in their roles. And then we put the name. So we start with let me go back here. The name comes in second. See, I've got the seat, I've got the roles, and then I'm going to add the name. Every time I go through this exercise with teams, I can see at least one member on the leadership team, their wheels are spinning, and they're like, okay, where am I going to sit? What do I want to be responsible for? I had one team, this lady was, we had 10 people around the table. That's usually way too many. But I could just see her little beady little eyes, like, what? And all of a sudden she was responsible for like 16 different functions, HR and finance and all these different things. I'm like, she's not going to be here very long. And come to find out, she had burned bridges within the business. She had started to burn bridges with vendors. She had started to burn bridges with their bank. Like, just a disaster. But that's what we're doing. When we want to take a role and like, what am I going to get to do first? That's when this goes off the rails. So we want to start with what's the right structure? What do we need it to look like for the next 3 to 6 months, or 6 to 12 months? And then what are the roles that we need that function to manage? And then we start saying, who's the right person to sit in that seat? That's what we want to start with. So that's why we start with structure first, people second. So for example, if we had the marketing and sales seat, name was there already. That's not how we normally do it. My slide shows a little bit off. LMA stands for leadership, management, and accountability. So that's anything that it has to do with training or onboarding or dealing with people. They're responsible for marketing, hitting sales numbers, selling, account management. I'll give you a better example from me, right? So I played college basketball and then coached college basketball. And when I was in college, we needed a point guard on our team. And a point guard for the basketball team is they need to defend the best ball handler, create scoring chances, score points, control the tempo of the game, minimize turnovers. Guess who wasn't a great fit for that seat? Right? I went to a really small school in Nebraska, like really small, 900 kids. I was the tallest guy on the team. I'm not going to be your point guard, right? But my buddy Mike was phenomenal. And so we use GWC, and I'll explain why this makes sense, GWC to figure out whether or not someone's in the right seat. So GWC stands for gets it, wants it, has the capacity to do it. Gets it means that they wake up and they just naturally gravitate to being phenomenal in that role. Perky Pile, 6'4.5", with terrible ball handling skills, terrible court vision, probably isn't going to be your point guard. I don't get it. It's not my God-given talent. My buddy Mike, that was his God-given talent. They want it. They wake up and they're like, let's go. I want to own this seat. I want to own being the point guard or marketing seat or whatever, my graphic designer. I want to own that seat. They have to naturally, you can't coach wanting it. You can't beg, plead, or cajole somebody to want it. They have to, like, on their own want it. Anybody have anybody that doesn't want their role in their business? I'm not saying your seat. Let's be clear. But you've got employees that you're like, I'm not sure that they want this job, right? And then finally is the capacity to do it. Do they have the training? Do they have the skills? Do they have the experience? Do they have the technical qualifications? Do they have the emotional capacity to manage that role? I've had multiple clients who someone gets to, they're in a seat, and then the business outgrows them. And at some point, they run out of capacity. They can't keep up either with the energy or the emotion or the skills necessary to lead that next business. I worked for a place that the staff all had this kind of saying where they said, well, if they can't do the job, you know what we should do? We should promote them. What? They can't quite do the job, so let's promote them? And there was a lot of head scratching from the rest of us in the staff. Anybody work at a place like that before? Like, how the hell did that guy get that job? how did she get promoted? You're like, oh, they couldn't do their job there. Let's see if they can level up. Okay, that didn't make sense to me. But gets it, wants it, capacity to do it. Yes, sir. Fantastic. That's a great question. So his question was, we're small, we can't promote them when they suck because we don't have that many seats. What do we do if there are 2 out of 3 yeses? So I'll tell you this. This should be 3 yeses, right? When we did the plus minus on core values, we said, okay, there's a bar. Usually it's, if I got 5 core values, it's 3 pluses, 2 plus minuses, no minuses. When it comes to GWC, I need 3 yeses. They get it, they want it, capacity to do it. Now, I understand. Entrepreneurial companies, sometimes we have to be patient to train somebody up. So what we tell our clients, and what I tell my clients all the time, it's okay if capacity to do it is a no for now, if you have the time and your own capacity to be able to shepherd them along and train them to reach capacity. But they still need to get it, and they still need to want it. Great question. Thank you so much. Any other questions? No? Okay. So what we do with that people analyzer, if you turn back to page 5, guess what? You can just write gets it, wants it, capacity to do it across the top there at the end of your core values. Now you have a really powerful tool to determine whether someone is a right person, they fit your core values, you love them, they don't suck your energy out, it's great to see them every single day. And then we're going to do gets it, wants it, capacity to do it to see, are they a fit in the seat? Are they a fit in the seat? So what happened, and again, the bar for the GWC is 3 yeses. So there's our right seat. I feel like I went backwards here a second. Give me a minute here. All right, so when we've started with those 3 major functions, marketing and sales, operations, finance, we start building out the roles. And for those of you that have 10 or more people, 20 more people, this becomes a lot easier. Don't worry about building it out too far. If you're still real small, it's okay. But eventually it looks like something like this, right? Our accountability chart looks something like this. And there's roles in every seat. There's function names or seat names. And then we've put people's names in there. And what happens is there's going to be 2 types of people issues that arise when we start digging into the people component. The first is this. You got right person in the wrong seat. You love this person. Man, they bring energy to the team, but they're just not quite cutting it in their role or in their job. It's frustrating. And what I beg with you and plead with you to do, so that you don't end up as an accidental nonprofit, is that you would either find them a seat that fits or encourage them to find another business where they are a right person that has a seat where they can be the right seat owner as well. Right? It's super difficult because this is where we dig in and we're like, man, we love this person. We don't want to let them go, but they're not cutting it. We got to make a tough choice. And then you've got the wrong person in the right seat. And I'll tell you right now, generally, the wrong person, they don't fit your culture, but they're in the right seat. A lot of times, they hold more than one seat because they've run off or scared off or frustrated enough other people that they're like, well, just let Bill handle it. Just let Jim handle it. Just let Sherry handle it. I don't care. And they crush it. They're doing great in that job. But everybody walks on eggshells around them, avoids them like the plague, right? So you got a wrong person in the right seat. Those are the 2 types of people issues. And again, you got to make the tough call. Another client had a finance seat, was in charge of HR, was in charge of procurement, in charge of everything. It just felt like everything, right? And before we even started our sessions together, I had 4 calls with the visionary, and he said, I don't know about her. I don't know about her. I was like, we'll move at the pace that you're ready. We'll move at the pace that you're ready. But everything that you're telling me, what do you think the right decision is? But I'm so worried that she's got so much institutional knowledge and she's involved in so many different things. I said, that's the problem. She's got so much institutional knowledge and you've let her have her fingers in so many different pieces of the pie that now you're worried about it. So I would rather you make the call sooner than later. And what I would say is usually within 90 to 180 days, so 3 to 6 months, you'll have a pretty good idea of whether or not you need to make a move, right? So 2 types of people issues. When we have 100% of our people that are right people, we love them, they fit our core values, and they're in the right seat, the GWC get, want, and have the capacity to fulfill the roles in their seat at a high level, that's 100% strong in the people component. Any other questions on the people component? All right. Next up, we've got the data component. The data component, for years it seemed like businesses, small businesses, entrepreneurial businesses weren't tracking enough data or any data. And now we've gotten to the era of data, and it's like we're tracking way too much. We're getting inundated. We're just being flooded with that data. So Jim Barksdale, former CEO of Netscapes, loved this quote: "If we have data, let's look at the data. And if all we have are opinions, let's go with mine." Anybody else running their business on opinions? Yeah, some of us are. Let's be honest, right? We're going to be open and honest here. Some of us we're running our business on our opinions. And the problem is, if we're running our business off of one or two people's strong opinions, sometimes there's data to back it and sometimes there's not. We're going to run into some minefields. And so we strengthen the data component two ways. The first is by developing what we call a scorecard. And if you look at page number 10 in your booklet, you could see an example of a blank scorecard. And what this includes is you've got a list of measurables. You've got a goal for each one of those measurables. You've got 13 weeks of data at a glance to get an idea of whether we can start spotting trends and things like that. And then on the left-hand side, we've got who is responsible for driving that measurable. Somebody has to be accountable for that measurable, right? So if I populate this on my slideshow, we could see this fill out. Some of us like the word dashboard or scorecard. I like scorecard because I played basketball growing up. I want to know if we're winning or not. But the scorecard really is like a dashboard, right? This last summer, my son he turns 15 on Monday, and so he was going through driver's ed last summer, and I was at the golf course. I was like, "Hey, buddy, drive me home from the golf course. We'll see how we're going." So we're chatting away, golf course outside my little tiny town, 1,200 people. We're chatting along, and it's 55 from when you get on the highway to pass these string of houses, and then it goes to 65. And we're chatting along. We're enjoying each other's company, and then all of a sudden, I see flashing lights, and my son's like, "Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God." I'm like, "Whoa, take a deep breath. Let's pull over to the side." And what happened was we were so engaged with what was going on in our conversation that he wasn't paying attention to his speedometer, the speed he was going. He wasn't looking out his windshield to see what the speed limit was. And so we got into trouble, and the sheriff pulled him over and had a little conversation with him. And what this scorecard is, there's a reason. The scorecard is basically like our windshield and our dashboard to tell us when things are going off the rails so we can avoid the flashing lights behind us telling us that we messed up, right? And I'm going to encourage you, when you start building out you can see examples of measurables on that page 11. When you start building out your scorecard, we're looking for 5 to 15 numbers. I don't need it to look like the cockpit of a fighter jet, right, with all these lights and bells and whistles. I just saw an article online this week that said, do you think that you could land a jumbo jet in an emergency if you needed to? And the headline said, no, you can't, right? Like that just happens in the movies because there's all these bells and whistles and things like that. We're looking for the 5 to 15 numbers that give us an absolute pulse on the business. And I'm going to encourage you that those should be leading indicators. What do I mean by leading indicators? There's a reason why in your car, the windshield is exponentially bigger than your rearview mirror, right? My grandfather used to drive backwards, and all he did was look in the mirror. And I was like, I don't know how he does that, but he's doing 35 miles an hour backwards, looking in the rearview mirror. I don't want you to do that. What I would prefer you do is look at the dashboard, look at the windshield, see what's coming, and then periodically, what do we teach our kids to do when you drive? What are you taught? Glance at your mirror periodically. Is there anything behind you that you missed? Check your side mirrors, right? But most of our focus is forward-facing. When we set really great measurables that are leading indicators that give us an idea of what's going to happen before it happens, we become much better predictors and identifiers of potential issues. We can avoid things way faster. That's what we're looking for with this scorecard. So we've got a scorecard at the leadership team level, and then we also want a scorecard for each department. Here's some examples of real-world measurables. Preferably, they're leading indicators. There might be one or two or three that are, historical markers or past numbers that we're tracking on a weekly basis to give us a pulse on the business. Well, they really want you to see those scorecard measurables. There we go. So we have a scorecard at the leadership team level, and then we want each function to have their own scorecard, right? So sales and marketing should have a scorecard. Your operations function or functions should have a scorecard. Your finance department or finance function should have a scorecard. And then ultimately, we want to get to a place where every employee has 1 to 3 measurables that helps them know whether or not they're helping the team win. Every employee should have 1 to 3 measurables. Yes, sir?
On one of those metrics, you have two words called sales call.
Sales calls, yeah.
So how would you define what a sales call is?
This is, you're trying to set a trap for me, aren't you?
Well, I just wonder, because I have to sell, but I have to sell, and I don't really sell, I just kind of try to help people out, and then it turns into orders.
Sure.
Just, I don't like to go call somebody up like, hey, I think you need to buy this, let me come over and talk to you about it.
Sure. So his question was, how do you define sales calls? Because I just talk to people, and it turns into a sale eventually, generally speaking, right? That's how your sales process. That's okay. You don't even have to have sales calls as your measurable. But in traditional selling, there's those folks that are doing that cold calling, right? And we want you to hit, we know that you need to hit 40 sales calls a day in order to get to 10 proposals, which turn into, right? So we could track, we're just trying to use these measurables to get an idea through the sales process in this example of where things are breaking down, right? Are you making your 40 calls? Oh, you only made 20? And you only closed 1 deal, but we need you to close 4, so you probably should be making those 40 or 60 or 80 calls so that we figure out where that's breaking down. It's a leading indicator so we can fix the issue without having to just stand over your shoulder and watch you make sales calls every single day. So that's what we're using that scorecard to kind of manage our folks and manage the processes along the way. Great question. Any other questions? All right, so we're looking for 1 to 3 measurables for each person, right? We want to make sure that everybody understands how they're helping the team win. So that's getting our data component when we're tracking 5 to 15 numbers. Everybody has a scorecard that they're checking in on a weekly basis, and everybody's got a number that they know they helped the team win because they hit that number every single week. That's 100% strong in the data component. So again, when we are clear about our vision, where are we headed? Everybody's sharing that. We're starting to sort through the right structure for our people. We're dealing with right people, right seats. We're getting everybody situated. We're tracking the right amount of data. What happens is all of the issues that seem to pop up, opportunities, frustrations, walls that we're running into, things that are holding us back, problems, those are what we call issues. And we need to develop a culture and make it safe for everybody in the organization to say, hey, there's a problem, let's wave our hands. There's a problem, and what we do is we want to put that on an issues list. We already talked about that long-term issues list, but what do we do with those day-to-day or week-to-week issues that seem to pop up? We want to put those on an issues list. And then we're going to do something called the IDS, or what we also call the issues solving track. So let's dive in. So we've got this list of issues. We know we need to dive in. And what Gino developed this piece of the EOS model, this component, because he was in a fit of rage, frustrated at teams that would talk round and round and round and round issues and never actually come up with a solution. Nothing ever got solved. The same issue kept popping up over and over and over again. It's kind of like, hey, let's have a meeting to discuss the problem, and then you run out of time. You're like, hey, next week let's set another meeting to discuss the problem. And then you talk about it, and then we're really great at discussing the hell out of problems. And we rarely spend any time identifying the root cause of the issue. I'll give you an example. My son was 2 years old. We lived in upstate New York. We rented this old farmhouse, and it was surrounded by woods on 3 sides. It was on 4 acres. Our landlord was just through the woods. We were newly married. And my wife calls me at work. She said, it's March, it's about now, and she calls me and she says, Aaron, there's a snake in our bathroom. I said, excuse me? She said, there's a snake in our bathroom. And I said, well, I'm 45 minutes away. I don't know what you want me to do about it. She's like, don't worry about it. I took care of it. She grabbed my 7-iron and invited it to not live in our house anymore, but in the hole in the ground. She killed it, right? And I said, okay, well, you solved it. My wife's a badass, by the way. So she killed the snake, got rid of, threw it out. My 2-year-old had been on the, like, Mommy, there's a snake, right? And so the next week, she calls me at work again. She says, Aaron, there's a snake in our bathroom. I said, what are you talking about? You killed it. There's another snake in our bathroom. Again, she has to kill a snake, throw it out in the yard. She calls our landlord, and he comes over, and he goes down into our stone basement. And right below the register in our bathroom, snakes had laid eggs, and now they were all hatching, and the snakes were coming up to get warm in the springtime on the return in the bathroom. Well, we could have spent the rest of spring beating the hell out of snakes with my 7-iron, which had never been more bloody, which doesn't surprise me. But what we instead did was went down into the basement and found the snake's nest of the issue and got rid of the snake's nest. Our landlord took care of it. Guess what? We didn't have any more snakes the rest of the time we lived there. And what we're doing, what a lot of you are doing, is beating the hell out of snakes as they arrive, and you're not actually going into the basement and finding the snake's nest. So when you're solving issues, you've got to go in the basement. I know it's dirty and dark and scary down there, but you got to shine light on it and pull the snake's nest out and get rid of the issue once and for all. Identify the root cause of the issue. So the way we teach this with EOS is we say, all right, you've got your issues list. What are the 1, 2, and 3 most important issues that if we run out of time, if we solve these 3 issues, we're golden. It's gonna make our lives so much better. It's gonna make the business run more efficiently. We're gonna be happier. We're gonna have more time. It's gonna remove the headache once and for all. So we've got Andy S. as a right seat issue. Rather than just diving in and saying, oh yeah, Andy's a problem, and then just bitching and moaning about Andy, what we want to do is say, is it a right person issue? Is it a right seat issue? Or maybe it's a training issue. Maybe we haven't trained them well enough yet, right? So we want to dig down, find the actual root cause of the issue, spend majority of our time identifying what's leading to that issue, briefly discuss it, and then we're going to come up with a solution, which means we're going to identify who's going to take care of the solution, what is the solution, how are they going to solve it, and when is it going to be done by, right? So we want to spend most of our time identifying the issue. Don't repeat each other and like pile on and like, oh, and another thing, right? Once you start repeating yourself, you're politicking, let's move right to a solution. And what happens is, once we've identified it, we've briefly discussed it, and then we've come up with our solution, we cross it off and we move on to number 2. When you start this process, you might only solve 1 or 2 or 3 issues, but now I've got teams that are solving 12, 15, 18 issues in their weekly meeting. Like completely transform their issue-solving component of their business, right? And so if we get through those 3, we're just going to start over and rinse and repeat. So once everybody's comfortable raising their hand, getting their issues on a list somewhere, and they're all comfortable identifying the root cause, briefly discussing, coming up with a solution to the problem, guess what? That's 100% strong in the issues component. Any questions so far? Yes, sir.
In our small company, is this something that you do often with just leadership or the entire firm in a 5-person company?
Great question. So I have a team that is 4 people. They're all on the leadership team, right? But honestly, in a business that small, having a weekly meeting, which we'll talk about in the traction component, having a weekly meeting where you're spending time together actually addressing issues, I would have everybody in that small of an organization. Just makes sense to have everybody in the same room probably. Good question. All right, next up we have the least sexy component, the process component. We want to get to a place where the most important things in your business are done the best and right way every single time. Some of you mentioned that we want our business to run without us, right? I want to be able to take a vacation or retire. I want to hire a GM to take over for me, and so it's just that passive income. This is the component you need to focus on, right? You need to dive in on this processing component, and the first piece of that is documenting and simplifying your processes. every business has a handful of core processes. We're going to do a deeper dive on this on tomorrow at 4 o'clock or 3:30 or something, tomorrow afternoon. Come find me. But everybody has 6 to 10 truly core processes. You got a people process. How are we going to identify we have a need in the business? How are we going to go out and interview and hire and onboard those people? You got a marketing process, generating leads. You got a sales process. How are we going about closing those leads, handing those over to operations to make sure that we're handling our customers' needs appropriately? Maybe we've got a customer service or customer success process. Maybe you've got an accounting process or finance process, tracking that money flowing in and out. We just go through a process. Get that? You're welcome for that dad joke. We just go through a discovery process to identify the 6 to 10 core processes in your business, and then that becomes your table of contents for your process manual. Now, we all came from corporate America. Most of us did. How many of you remember those SOP manuals that are like 700 pages long? How many of you read the whole thing? Okay, no one's a liar this time. That's good. Right? 700-page SOP manual, no one's going to look at it. So what we do is we take a high-level entrepreneurial approach. We're going to identify the 6 to 10 truly core processes. We're going to document them at a high level, the 20%, and we're going to simplify them. We're going to look for the 20% that gets us 80% of the result consistently. How do we do that? So let's look at a people process. We're going to identify there's a need. We're going to define the roles in the seat that we're trying to fill. We're going to go through a hiring process. Notice there's just a couple bullets there under each of those. Onboarding, lead management, accountability, termination. That's it. It's one page, right? Do we have an example of that in here? I can't remember. No, we don't. Yeah, take a picture of it. Love it. Right? So super simple. We're going to dumb it down. We're going to go as simple as possible so that we can make sure that people with a brain can look at the high-level steps and can execute on that, but also show up with their skill set, with their talents. When we're hiring really great people that fit our culture, that fit the seat that they're supposed to sit in, they can take that high-level process and execute on it pretty close to the way you would if you were handling the situation. Sales process, another one, high-level, new lead, initial call, qualify, fit, meeting, proposal. Right? This isn't super detailed. The amount of time that it takes to dive in and document every single piece of the step and every single potential thing that could happen is a waste of time. No one's ever going to dig into that and read that. Over time, they're going to be able to execute on it without that. So we've got your company's way of doing business. We've got a table of contents, 6 to 10 truly core processes. You've got 1 page, 1 to 5 pages for each of those core processes. So at maximum, if I've got 10 core processes and each of them are 5 pages long, how big is your SOP manual? Math. 50. Yeah, okay, good. I got my calculator out earlier. That's the only reason I knew it. Right? So our goal is to systemize the predictable so that you can humanize the exceptional. I want to give my people guardrails so that they don't go off a cliff somewhere and take our business with it, but I don't want to give them handcuffs so that they can't show up with initiative and with their own ideas and their own energy, right? And so what we do, once we have those documented and simplified, we need to get those followed by all, which means we have to train everybody in our business. We have to measure whether or not those things are getting done well. We have to lead, manage, and hold our people accountable to those processes. And then we have to update those at least once a year consistently so that we make sure we're doing things the best and right way every single time. Technology changes, best practices changes. We identify things when we go back and update those processes. We're almost out of time, so I'm going to hustle here. All right, last up is the traction component, and it's at the bottom for a reason. We're pulling that vision down to the ground. Rubber meets the road. Let's get some traction. You're welcome. That's Gino. I didn't come up with that one. So we already talked about this. There's rocks. We want everybody in the organization to have at least one quarterly priority that they're responsible for driving their growth and the business's growth. We already talked about that one. And then we've got our meeting pulse. And how many of you love meetings? How many of you left corporate America because you couldn't stand meetings? Okay, yeah. No, most of us hate meetings. If you were going to rate your meetings right now, scale of 1 to 10, 10 is the greatest meeting of all time, 1 is a dumpster fire, where would you rate your meetings now? 6? 5, 8, love it. Good for you. Yeah, most of us are around a 5 or a 6 because we don't know how to run great meetings. We've watched other people run meetings and we knew they were terrible. How many of you have been in a meeting and you're like, this could have been an email? We all have. I'll save you the trouble. I'll raise our hand for everybody. Everybody knows that meeting, right? We're avoiding that. So let me tell you about how we identify a 10 out of 10 meeting. Ready? Number one, we already talked about this 90-day world. We want to make sure that we're keeping our circles connected. And we go through this meeting pulse on a weekly basis to make sure that we stay connected. And this is a great meeting. Number one, it's on the same day every single week. It's at the same time every single week. It starts on time, right? So if the meeting starts at 9 a.m., that means that everybody's in the conference room, 8:55, all the papers they need, everything they need to run a great meeting. It starts on time. It ends on time. Anybody have meetings that seem to go on forever? Right? You get in that meeting and someone, it's coming to a close and then someone's like, we're making really great progress here. We should keep going. And everybody in the room's like, yeah. And they really mean no. Right? So we got to end on time so it doesn't fold into every other meeting. And we use the same agenda every single time. And I'll show you what that agenda looks like. So this is what we start with. We start with a segue because we want to do some team building. We want to develop some team health. What's one piece of business good news? One piece of personal good news that has happened in the last week. Just share that. If you've got 5 people in the room, you got 5 minutes for this, everybody gets 1 minute. Don't let that one person wax eloquent about their weekend and they started a home brewing thing and they went to their kid's soccer game and right. Don't let them swallow up all that time. Just real quick. We just want a snippet, a glance. And a couple things that this does. One, I already mentioned it, builds team health. We don't talk a lot, even in our small businesses, sometimes we don't talk about our personal lives and share and kind of get to know each other. So it helps us do that. And then number 2, it's like resetting our brain. We know that when we start sharing that segue, that good news, personal and professional best or personal and professional good news, our brains are triggered to say, hey, guess what? We're about ready to work on the business. Peter talked about that. Let's work on the business. And then we're going to go through 3 pieces of reporting only. And I'll tell you why I say that. Because we want to defend when things aren't going well, right? So we talked about our scorecard. We're going to look at those 5 to 15 numbers, compare the weekly number to the goal, and say, is it on track or off track? If it's off track, we're going to drop that down to the issues list. We're not going to say, oh, well, it rained last week, and I had a flat tire, and all these things, and make excuses or start to explain why it was that way. No, if we want to learn more about it, we're going to drop it down. That might not be the most important thing we need to talk about today. Number 2, we're going to do a rock review. So those quarterly priorities, we want to keep those in our periphery, or not just in our periphery, we want to keep them front and center so that we know we're on track or off track to completing that quarterly priority. So we're just going to do a quick check. We're going to say, Perky Pile, rock number 1, on track or off track? It's off track. Drop it down. And then number 3, we're going to do customer and employee headlines. We're spending the rest of the week operating in the business, our head is down, and we don't take time sometimes to raise our hand and say, hey, customer A was super happy about our delivery of this product, and customer B was really pissed off because we really dropped the ball on that one, right? So we're raising our hand, we're sharing the good, the bad, and the ugly. And if there's more that needs to be talked about, then that 5 minutes, we're going to drop that down to our issues list. Then we're going to drive some accountability. We're going to insert some accountability here with a to-do list. And a to-do is a 7-day action item. Write that down. A to-do is a 7-day action item or a 7-day commitment that says by the meeting next week, I'm going to cross this off my to-do list. We're looking for 90% or better of our commitments to each other on a weekly basis being completed. And if we're not hitting 90% or better, it's an accountability issue. We're saying, I'm not truly committed. I've got either too much going on, or I'm lazy, or I really don't respect my commitment to you. So we want to use this to-do list to make sure the most important things on a weekly basis are being attacked and completed and crossed off our list. And if it's not, we're going to drop it down. But this drives accountability. I'm much more likely, yes ma'am?
Aaron, I wanted to ask, if you're saying that you have 7-day action items, do you have a limit to people, or is it something that depends on the task?
Great question. So she's asking, is there a limit of the amount of to-dos that someone can take on a weekly basis? Like just off the cuff, no. But I also understand that there's something around capacity. I can't do everything. And so if I see you taking 45 to-dos, and then next week we come back and there's 43 to-dos left, it's my job as a leadership team member or as a member in that meeting to say, hey, maybe next week let's figure out which ones really are the most important. Let's help you manage some of that time. So it's not just a, hey, why aren't you getting your stuff done? It's more of a, I can help, what can I take off of your plate for you, right? Yeah, it's not a hammer. That's a great question. So I would be careful to take on too much because guess what? You still have jobs to do. There's still other things that have to happen. So there's not a limit, but I wouldn't take too many. Great question. I might have to dig into our community and ask everybody, like, how many to-dos do they think is too many? Right? Great question. Any other questions? All right, so we got our to-do list. We're just checking off. Is it done or not done? Done or not done? And we're trying to move 90% of our to-dos to done every single week. And then we've got 60 minutes in this 90-minute meeting to dive in and actually spend time identifying the root cause, finding that snake's nest, briefly discussing and then solving that issue and usually the solutions to those issues become to-dos for the next week. Are we clear there? The flow there? So I've got 60 minutes to identify 1, 2, and 3. Identify, discuss, solve. Number 2, identify, discuss, solve until we run out of time. With 5 minutes left, we have to conclude this meeting. Remember, we have to conclude the meeting on time because that's one of the rules of a great meeting, to be a 10 out of 10. And we're just going to wrap up, make sure that everybody's clear on what their to-dos are, and then we're going to rate that meeting on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the best. Our goal is 10 out of 10 meetings every single time. That's why we call it a level 10. And that's the traction component, getting it 100% strong. Everybody's got rocks. Everybody's in the right meeting pulse so that they can solve issues, et cetera, et cetera. And that is the EOS model. Any questions about what we presented today? So yes, sir. Yeah.
Is there any specific recommendation for the go daily? Is that it, or is that, you have maybe a 15-minute daily?
Fantastic question. So his question was, we just went through a weekly meeting. Is there any other prescription for like a daily meeting or something like that? I'll give you kind of a longer answer. Number 1 is, at a leadership team level, if I'm big enough that I have 3 to 5 people or 3 to 6 people that are kind of managing the whole organization, I'm 10, 15, 20 people or more, generally they will have their weekly meeting for 90 minutes, and then I'll have functional meetings. So maybe the sales team has a weekly meeting that's only 60 minutes long. Maybe the production team has a weekly meeting that's only 60 minutes long. So just kind of finding the right meeting pulse or cadence for you. I do have some teams that are, even in a smaller business, that say, you know what we need at the beginning of every day is that 15-minute stand-up to say, okay, what's our priorities for today, right? It's very much a Scrum type of a methodology where it's like, okay, these are the projects we need to work on or complete today at a 15. So finding the right meeting pulse. So in the traction component, there's the meeting pulse. So that's the weekly meeting. It could be a daily meeting, and then there's quarterly meetings in there. You want to find the meeting pulse that works for your team. What keeps everybody connected appropriately where you're not just sitting on each other and you're not drifting apart, right? Great question. Someone else was up here, question? Yeah. Okay. Yes, sir. Right. Okay, so let me clear this up because his question is, we looked at the to-do list and identified some issues, and then it went back the other. It's like circular, right, like this. Are we actually getting anywhere? So reviewing last week's to-dos, the commitments that I made to my team last week, did I get them done? Anything I didn't get done may need to be talked about and put on the issues list. Correct. Yeah, so I'm going to review that to-do list initially as just, hey, we had 14 things on our to-do list, done, 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 not done, not done, 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 and we're looking for 90% or better, and then we say, hey, is there anything we need to talk about these 2 that didn't get done? Sometimes we're like, hey, we were waiting on the vendor to get back to us or our client to get, like, I did what I could do, and it's not done, but it'll probably be done the next week. Just leave it on the issues list. You don't necessarily have to drop it down. Yeah, good question. Other questions? Yes, sir.
So all businesses are different, okay? In your experience, have you seen a couple core values that most successful businesses have? Typically, that's on their list.
Great question. So his question was, are there one or two core values that most businesses seem to put on as their core values that really drive? I'll tell you this. Here's something you don't want to do. You don't want to just put something on there that sits on the wall that we don't actually do anything with, right? WorldCom and Enron both had integrity as core values. Right? Nailed it. Nailed it. So what we're looking for, the short answer, no. Because every culture is a little bit different. Now, if you look at these core values over here, there might be some that really resonate with you and your team, and that's okay. But everybody's core values are different, and that's kind of the point, because your culture is going to be different than everybody else's shop here in the building, right? And we want it to be true to you, and to attract the people that are true to who you really are. Good question. Did I answer that okay? Clear? Yeah. Great. Okay. Voted on the core values. How many people in the business? 5. Yep. So the exercise that we go through is we list all potential core values, and then we do this keep, kill, combine. We're putting them all together, and then we come up to these are the 3 to 5 or 7 that really, that's who we are. And we want to find other people that this is who they are too. Great. Love it. Great ad. Anybody else? 90 minutes. Why not 60 minutes? He said movies are 90 minutes long because that's how long you can hold your bladder. And that's how long your meeting is, because that's how, I'll tell you this, the small business that I joined, the owner, could only last 45 minutes. So we had a potty break in the middle of our 90-minute meeting, our level 10, so that he could go relieve himself. So there's that nugget. Most of the time, you might get into some hairier issues. We don't want to speed past the issue-solving section. So especially at that higher level or leadership team, we want to make sure that they have enough, that 60 minutes is enough time to really dig deep and find the root cause and solve multiple issues. Lower down, it makes sense sometimes to have that 60-minute kind of level 10 meeting, because teams don't have the depth of issues or maybe the breadth of issues. It's more tactical a lot of times in their departments. Follow-up question? Nope, go ahead. I'm right here. I'm locked in. It's you and me. Yeah.
I would this question I asked, what was done to make it happen? We all know it's not done.
Right.
If you're asking why it's not done, you're kind of pushing them, and then people kind of push back.
Right.
In this way, what actually works, advice, I know it's not done.
So getting some clarity. So when someone says it's not done, he's sharing. He asked them more of what were the obstacles that kept it from not getting done, so that we can maybe identify for the next week some other tips or tricks or something that we can do to kind of tweak the approach?
No, it's why is it not, let's say, done? Oh, because they didn't deliver.
Oh, they didn't deliver, okay?
That's why it's not done.
Right.
This is what. So when I asked what was done, I called them 5 times.
Okay. So what steps did you attempt to get it done? Love it. Love it. Some additional clarity. Any other questions? All right, I've got a couple more slides here. That's it. So I've got to... Sometimes it likes to, here we go. Silence. There we go. So our goal is to get results. Remember, we talked about whatever you want from your business, you're going to get it using this methodology and these tools. So there's a handful of tools here that you can use to get what you want. So we call these the foundational tools. They're all listed here. There's going to be a QR code at the end of here that you can take a picture of. It will take you to EOS Worldwide's website. You can download all these tools for free so that you can start filling them out. Or you can grab an extra one of these from the back and use that as well, right? And here's some additional resources. You can go to EOS Worldwide. There's a full traction library. So I gave you that traction book. That's the first one. That's what we call the Bible when it comes to EOS. That's the handbook. There's additional books, process, et cetera, et cetera. There's downloadable tools and videos. There's a QR code next coming up. There's something called Basecamp. So some of you are looking at this and you're like, man, I would love to learn more, do a deep dive. You can go to Basecamp, bc.eosworldwide.com, and there's videos there. It's a subscription model that you can pay on a monthly basis, do a deep dive if you wanted to roll this out on your own, self-implement. You can call EOS implementers like me. So I'm not here to sell you anything. And some of you are skeptical, like, hell yeah, you are, right? Aaron's trying to sell us something. I promise you I'm not. If you have questions, if you have concerns, if you want to learn more, zero obligation. Inside that book that I gave you, or on the back of this booklet, is my email address and my cell phone number. I encourage you to pick up the phone, call me, text me, email me. I promise you I won't try to sell you something. I'll be happy to answer your questions. And if you're like, hey, I don't want to talk to Aaron, he's in South Dakota, but I would like to talk to someone in my market, I'm happy to make an introduction for you. Help First is probably the most quoted core value for EOS Worldwide. We are truly passionate about helping business owners like you get the most from your business and live the life that you want to live. And my final thought is this. Number one, in order, just like Peter said, if you want to get somewhere, you've got to have a way to get there. Choose and use a system. I don't care if it's EOS. It could be Peter. It could be something you create off the back of a napkin. I don't care, but you have to pick something. One of our things that we share with our clients all the time, you cannot run a great organization or a great business on multiple operating systems. You must choose one. Some of you have been trying this and trying that and trying this and trying that, and your people are like, what are they going to bring to us next? Pick one thing and stick to it. Whatever you feel like will get you there, stick to it. So choose one and use it to get what you want. So this is from Mike Payton, our former visionary. He had a client that said, I've never felt so alive and in control. I own the vision for my future and the ability to share it with others and get them up on board. Here's the best part. I'm 41 years old and I can only imagine what is possible. You can get what you want from your business if you operate using the EOS model and the EOS system. So thank you so much for time. Come find me at lunchtime or whatever. I'm here to answer questions. Oh, my QR codes didn't pop up. Thank you so much. Enjoy lunch, everybody.